good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Litiane LG, and this lesson is brought to you by the Free State Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Now, today we are focusing on contemporary economic issues of the day, which is paper 2 topic that is relevant for question 1, question 3, question 4, as well as question 6 in your prelim exam, the one that you're gonna be writing, as well as in your final examination. And we'll be looking at environmental sustainability, which is topic 14, which is our last topic for the content or our last topic for the term. Then we can be saying, after that, we look at the revision as to how far we have done, or how ready are we, or how prepared are we for the final examination. So, as always, we start with our terminologies, where we get to remind ourselves these concepts that we are dealing with in economics. Remember, we always say that these concepts are going to assist us in question 1, section A, multiple choice questions, 1.2, match column, 1.3, economic concepts, and when we get to section B, we'll be asked to briefly describe this concept. It's a middle question for 2 marks. So we always need to be ready and prepared with these terminologies so that we know that the 2 marks are at least in the bag. As we always call them, the hanging fruits that we say, as an economics learner, you should be at least getting these concepts correct each and every time when you are asked to briefly describe them. And then also, these concepts assist you to start your essay in section C, because for briefly describing the concept that we are dealing with, that qualifies you for 2 marks. Therefore, it is always important for you to study and remember these concepts. So let us start reminding ourselves to say, what is an environment? Here we say it refers to everything that is around us, it being the land, water, the air, the plants, the animals, everything, as long as it provides us with a space to live and allow us to erect buildings, also produce food. That refers to the environment. Okay, so our main topic today is this environment, or this space that is around us, that allow us to erect buildings, produce food, and also the space to live. How do we sustain it? Hence, now we come with the concept environmental sustainability, where we say environmental sustainability refers to the ability of the environment that is around us to survive its use for economic activities. It means the ability of the environment to survive its use for economic activities. That means, I always say, for us to remember it carefully, treat our stomach as the environment. Okay? Now, if you don't allow the stomach to breathe, what are the consequences of that? So, you cannot say you're gonna eat this, after eat this, after eat this, drink this, after drink this. We know the consequences of that. Now, the environment is like that. If we produce, or there are human activities on the environment that does not allow the environment to breathe, it won't be able to survive its use for economic activities. We're going to be discussing the dangers of us not allowing the environment to breathe when we continue with the lesson. Okay. Now, for us to take care of the environment, there will be some things that we call them environmental subsidies. What are those? Those are the cash grants by the government for activities that reduce environmental damage. For example, recycling of waste, production of unleaded petrol, development of equipment to save energy or to reduce the smoke that are produced by the firms when are producing chemicals, etc. So those subsidies are there to promote what we call green economy, an economy that is free of pollution. So hence we say environmental subsidies, or why are they needed? You know that subsidies relates to the provision by government, either it being in the form of cash, as long as they are going to assist us at the end of the day. Okay? Then now, the biggest problem of this topic is this one: pollution. Sometimes we do it intended, sometimes we do it unintended. Why? Because we believe that the environment is there to stay for a very long time. So the pollution, we say, it is the introduction of waste matter into the environment, both directly or indirectly. How directly? When you pass around, people will be throwing papers around, they'll be throwing plastic, and when you ask them why they're doing that, they'll be telling you that they are creating employment, but not realizing that they are damaging the environment. So throwing a paper or a plastic around where there's no dustbins or places for recycling, that does not mean you are creating employment. It actually means you are actually contributing to environmental deterioration at the end of the day. Indirectly could be in the issue of externalities, of which we're going to be talking about here, where probably you would have thrown your garbage in the bin or something, and then something happens that the litter spill over. That could have not been an intended consequence thereof. Hence something, the real problem is this one, the issue of pollution. That is the one that damages our environment. Okay, now when you continue, there are two things that are required thereof. The first one is conservation. This one deals with sustainable use and management of both renewable and non-renewable resources to ensure that they are available for use for future generations. So whatever that we have currently, we should use it in a manner or in a very conservative way that at least the future generation will be able to use later on. We're going to be discussing more about the difference between conservation and preservation. So what is preservation thereof? It is to keep resources that are non-renewable intact. That's a key word there. So intact means we should keep them at their original form, the way they are, the way we found them, so that the future generation can be able to also find them and be able to use them. And also, they will keep them intact for future generations as well. Whatever that we are doing now, we are doing it in such a way that we think for future generation. That is why you remember the concept, environmental sustainability economists, and the ability of the environment to survive its use for economic activities, so that the future generations may also be able to find the environment intact, may also to find the environment the way it is. So we should use it in a very conservative way and in a very preservative manner. Another problem that we experience is the issue of soil erosion, where this one refers to the wearing away of a filled topsoil, that means the topsoil, by natural physical forces of water, wind, through the forces associated with farming activities such as tillage. So whenever we continue farming and not allowing the soil to recover again, cutting of trees, you'll see deforestation and everything. So the topsoil will keep on being washed away, and at the end of the day, that creates a problem because the environment is no longer at its own state. I want us back to look at deforestation now, where we are saying this one is associated with cutting of trees, clearing and removal of whatever rainforest that we are talking about into a less biodiverse ecosystem. So this is a problem as we realize that these trees gives us oxygen, they give us shade. They also, as much as they help us to make paper, to make beautiful furniture and everything, but can we use them in a very, very conservative way so that at least they are there for future generation. But if we cut the trees by not allow them to grow again, that is a problem. So deforestation on its own, it's a problem. But if you cut trees in a very conservative manner, we use them now, we allow them to grow again, that is not a problem, economists. The only problem is if we don't allow them to grow. So we realize that pollution comes with different forms, but also looking at the issue of soil erosion, we're also looking at the issue of deforestation then. Soil erosion, the removal of the topsoil on the field by either natural physical force of water, wind, and other forces that are associated with farming. Also deforestation, we said this is the cutting and clearing and removal of rainforest or trees into a less biodiverse. I know that as human beings, as long as we can erect buildings, as long as we can survive, it's okay, because we believe that the environment, it's there to stay. But we are damaging it as we go. Wherever there's a rainforest, let's keep it intact. But if we use it, let us use it in a very conservative way. Okay. So let's look at something that is called the state of the environment currently. We say now the environment is really under pressure because of human claims on the environment, because they are more than what nature can provide in a long-term basis. What are those claims? Increasing population numbers. Wherever there was a rainforest or there were trees, we'll cut them down so that we can erect buildings. Wherever there was a farming place, we now convert it into a commercial or residential area. That also affect the environment. Excessive consumption, like I mentioned in that where we see those trees that were there to provide us with oxygen, at the end of the day, we convert them into factories, we convert them into market where we can provide selling of goods and services. That on its own damages the natural environment. So as much as we claim that the land or the environment does not belong to someone else, but it affects the current generation, it will also affect the future generation. It's always under pressure. If you can look at now, we have continued fire outages. We see a point where there used to be snow. It's no longer there because of the heat waves and everything. Now we are experiencing floods in the country and around the world. At some point, we are experiencing drought. Now the question will be, what is the factor that is contributing to that? The factor there is humans, which is us. We are the main problem in terms of the environment. But because the environment provides us with food, the environment provides us with a space to breathe and erect buildings, let us use it in a way that we keep it intact or we keep it in a very conservative manner. We always sometimes now experience extreme winds, earthquakes, and all those things as a result of human activities. So, human activities put demands on the natural environment in two ways. One, we look at the inputs. The natural environment provides resources for living and working activities of us as people. That one we cannot debate it. We need this environment for survival. We need this environment for food purposes. But once we have received all those things, which is now the output, the living and working activities of humans produce waste, and that waste is disposed of in the environment. See the danger now. The natural environment provides us with the living space. It also allows us to work. It also allows us to survive in terms of food and everything. However, once we have received those or once we have consumed those, now in turn, instead of taking care of the very same environment that provides us with food and living space, we produce waste. That is thrown or disposed on the environment, which again becomes harmful or even dangerous to ourselves as well, to the environment itself, and also to the future generations that are there. So we really need to be careful when it comes to the issue of human activities on the environment. I'm still going to repeat, throwing of garbage where it's not supposed to be thrown, or papers or plastic, it's not creation of employment, but it is a damage to the environment. You are not less fortunate, or that does not mean you are not creating employment. If you take it, throw it in the bin, someone will remove it from there. That's a form of employment in another way. Does not mean you are making it easy for the person, but it means you are actually becoming environmentally friendly economists. That's what we want. For we understand that the environment provides us with space to live, allow us to erect buildings like I've mentioned, and also provide us with food in a way. Externalities now. What are these externalities? There are extra costs and benefits that are not captured by the transaction or by the market transaction. So these externalities can either be negative or positive. This topic, it is the topic, or it is the term that we have done when we're doing market failure in under markets. It is the same concepts or the same understanding where we even draw graphs that shows a positive externality as well as negative externality. But let us just recall what are those positive externalities and negative externalities in relation to the environment here, grade 12s. So it depends on whether people enjoy the additional benefits that they did not pay for, or they suffer the additional costs that they did not originally incur. The benefits will be associated with positive externality, and then the additional costs will be associated with negative externality. Remember that you were not included in the original transaction or in the decision making. So we are looking at this negative externality here. Pollution that is emitted from a factory affect the health of residents that are close by the factory. Sometimes we don't want to be far away from where we work, but if there's a factory that produces emissions or smoke that is really harmful to us, or that may damage our health in terms of lungs and everything, when the residents around that place get sick, they cannot go to the factory and claim hospital costs, but instead they will take themselves to the hospital and everything. So the cost of traveling and the cost of medicine are actually paid by you as a resident, and in that way, those costs that you are incurring, it affects you negatively because you are not included in the original decision making. The firm does not advertise to say, okay, residents of XXX, now that there's a factory here, every time when you get sick, come and get money for medicine. They do not say that because they are looking at the private benefits and the private costs. This additional cost or external costs are incurred by you as a resident. So that is a negative externality. Positive externality could be the very same factory now produces new technology, such as what? Solar. So the very same solar benefits us because now we get to enjoy during the case of load shedding, or during the production process, the solar system produces less of the pollution, or does not produce pollution at all, or does not even damage the environment. What will happen is that as residents that are near the factory, you will benefit because of traveling to buy goods and services won't be far away. It will be just closer to you in a way. But when you include it in the original decision making, you are not. You become a third party to this. You are an external person. That is what we are saying. It's an externality. So something that affects us negatively, it is negative externality. Whatever that affects us positively, it is a positive externality in a way. So that just a reminder of this grade 12s. You'll find big industries or big firms if they produce chemicals that damages the environment or the seawater, that is a negative externality. But the outcome of that production, maybe let's say they were producing cure or vaccine for something. The chemicals, when they get to flow out of the factory, or the smoke when it flows out of the factory, affect you negatively, which is a negative externality. But the outcome of that, if now the final product is here and it's a vaccine, you get to benefit. It's a positive externality. Just a recall and a reminder of this negative externalities and positive externalities, grade 12s. Okay, so what then causes pressure on the environment? It is caused by all types of pollution, directly or indirectly. Air pollution, the water use without taking care of it or without preserving it. Toxic emissions from the industries, I've mentioned those. Hazardous waste that are generated. We also look at the energy production as well as energy use, such as gas. All those things brings about pressure on the environment. Agricultural pollution, such as the chemicals, also those damage the environment. Overfishing without allowing the fish stock to regain its damage to the environment. Deforestation, cutting of trees. Soil erosion, we've mentioned those. Then we are also looking at the municipal waste, the sewage generations. That brings pressure to the environment. So hence I'm saying that all sorts of pollution, air pollution, the soil, the noise pollution, water pollution, etc., brings about damage to the environment or brings pressure to the environment. So it means now, grade 12s or economists, if we can use everything in the production of goods and services, but in a very cautious manner, that will allow the environment to breathe. Remember, when I started the lesson, I said to you, if you can take the environment as your stomach, if you don't allow it to breathe or you don't allow it to relax, you know the dangers of that. Same applies to the environment. So the environment, we need to take care of it to ensure the healthiness of that environment. And then we will be able to use it for a very long time, and the future generation will be able to enjoy it. I'll make an example. At the point where you and I used to see it being a rainforest or where there were a lot of trees, because of increasing population, those trees are cut down. Now houses are being built for residential purposes. In the near future, when you tell your children to say, you see all those buildings, during our time they were not there. It was only trees that were bringing oxygen to us. But now it's buildings. It means the natural environment has been damaged, indirectly or directly so. Pollution, we've mentioned that production and consumption of goods and services lead to unwanted residuals. And then pollution occurs when the flow of residual emissions resulting from human activities exceed, so that's the important part there, the natural environment capacity to absorb them. So here, we eat now, and we eat, then after that we drink Coke, then we drink Fanta, and then we drink Sprite. So the environment has a certain limited capacity to absorb them. So once that capacity has been exceeded, that results in pollution or results in damage to the environment. Therefore, technology and other controls of pollution have cleaner environmental effects than the previous technologies. We are looking at electricity produced from coal. We know it's a danger. Electricity produced from fossil fuels, we know it's a danger. So we need to move away from such because they harm the environment. We need to move to a clean energy. Solar systems, hydropower, as long as it's going to be an energy that is going to be less harmful to the environment. Those are the things that we need to produce, grade 12, or at least we can advise as economists. Okay. So damage to the environment as an issue of now climate change. It is the change in the composition of the atmosphere directly or indirectly related to human activity. Now, you should be seeing something here, Kritos, that every time we take a decision, that decision has got an impact on the environment. So it's going to be positive or negative, whether we are doing that directly or indirectly, every time we take a decision. So building up of certain gases on the atmosphere causes the heat from the sun to be captured into the atmosphere, which will lead to global warming. And this one is called what we call greenhouse effects. Then the changes has an effect on the world's weather patterns. That means the global warming. This could include a rise in the sea levels, change in the rainfall patterns, possible drought, and habitat loss. As you would recall, or if you get to speak to the elderly, they will tell you to say, at this time, we used to be expecting rain. But because of human activities, the rainfall patterns have changed completely. We're no longer receiving rain the way we're supposed to be receiving it. Hence now, we have now introduced a new concept that is called water shedding, where we have got lack of water in the areas where we stay. That is because of us humans, in terms of the human activities that we are having there. If you can look at an analogy of this picture that we are having here, all of us would desire the shape or the picture that we see on the right. But because of our activities, we might find ourselves being given what is on the left. And probably we may not experience that now, but the future generations may experience that. In past generations, the issue of water was not a problem because we received rain and the seasons that we're supposed to be receiving rains and the sun and everything and accordingly. But now, because of climate change, all those things have changed completely. Why? Because of human activities. Great tools. Okay, if you continue, we've mentioned that the issue of climate change affects the environment. Now there's a concept again that is called fracking. We said hydraulic fracking or fracking itself is an efficient way for energy companies to extract gas and oil from rocks that are deep under the ground. So it's a new term, this one, economics learners. You usually see these big firms and so on, especially in the mining sector. That's where the gas comes from. So gas and oil is received or is extracted from or extracted from rocks that are deep, deep under the ground. So how does that happen? It happens in a way that a high pressure solution of water is ejected and chemicals and sent into this something that is called shallow deposits to release the oil and the gas. So if companies that extract oil and gas have found that those rocks, for them to access that, that concept is called fracking. So if you see the way it is there, we'll look at the issue of the land, and then those pipes and everything will be inserted through water as well as sand up until to a point where these big rocks are cracked, and when they are cracked, the gas and the oil, it is then taken out. But it is very, very dangerous here because once fracking has taken place, it means we have disturbed these big rocks, the stability of nature the way it is, and that will result in earthquakes, pollution, and other related problems. So wherever there are mining activities or where there were mining activities, ask the residents around that particular area. They are the ones that experience tremor, or where at some point they will tell you that the land shook, or there was an earthquake maybe in an area in the Free State, or there was an earthquake in the area in the Northwest. But sometimes wherever there is no mining, you may hardly feel it, or it may not happen at all. But if it happens to a point that we feel it, it is because of fracking. So this extraction of gas and oil in these big rocks, that on its own affect the environment, will make us experience things such as earthquake. So excessive mining is also a problem in short great tops. Okay, when we move on, there's another concept there that is called desertification. This is a type of land degradation where once productive and thriving land transform into dry desert landscape. Okay, this includes the loss of plant life, soil erosion, degraded soil quality, water scarcity, etc., etc. So it tells us that initially that land used to provide us with life, used to provide us with food, but because of human activities, we see a lack of water. Then once that happens, the trees get to fall or get to dry up, and then the soil get to be eroded away. And then as that happens, the loss of plants is experienced in a way. So that is called desertification there. Okay. Then let's look at the state of the environment, because us as humans, we see the environment as a common resource. The concept environmental sustainability, we've mentioned that it is the ability of the environment to survive its use for economic activities. When we talk about economic activities, grade 12, it talks to production, income, and expenditure. So we use the environment to produce goods and services. We use the environment to erect buildings. All those are economic activities. We use the environment to make landmarks, the roads, wherever that we are going. So all those things, they have an impact on the environment. So we look at that the fact that the current levels of pollution and environment degradations are too high. That means the pure market has failed to provide optimal utilization of the environment. We have got an excessive use of the environment. The market economists fail because of various reasons. Number one, we see the market as a common resource, where we say the land or the environment does not belong to anyone. So because of that, we tend to abuse it. Where because now I own it, the person next to me own it, the person next to me own it, and all those things have got an impact on the environment. As long as we cannot see the market as a common resource, as long as we cannot see the environment as a common resource, but we see the environment as a need for us to survive, then the environment won't be damaged. So many of the services provided by the environment do not have a price, like I've mentioned. The issue of trees, they provide us with oxygen, but they are not priced. The only time you can price a tree is if it's been cut down into wood or into paper. But as it is, as natural as it is, you cannot price it. So therefore, there is no economic incentive to economize their use. At zero price, the environment will be overused. But if it's priced, we tend to take care of it. We are saving it for future generation. So number one, why the market fails to see the environment or to save the environment is because they see the environment as a common resource. It can be used by everyone without pricing. Okay. Number two, it is because of lack of knowledge. People may cause environmental damage without realizing it, especially when the effects of build up over a very long time. Like I always mention that sometimes we keep on throwing the papers away, and then we keep on consuming or utilizing cutting of trees for the benefit of us when we are looking at the profit as well as the cost only. But that has got an overlong effect. on us as human beings. So lack of knowledge has a way of making the market to fail. Number 3, carelessness. Consumers and businesses are frequently prepared to continue with their various harmful practices, which leaves the future generations to worry about the environmental consequences. We use now, we'll see later on. Because we believe that trees are from nature, they will grow anyway. But we saw that the issue of soil erosion is there, it's a problem. The issue of desertification, it is a problem as well. Why? Because of pollution. So we shouldn't be careless when it comes to the matters of the environment. Let us preserve the environment. Let us conserve the environment. Okay. Just so far, we said we see environment as a common resource. There is lack of knowledge. We care less when it comes to the environment. But beyond the market, there are 2 possible options that we can take, where we say the government can intervene now, which allow the market forces to operate and produce an outcome. The government can take control and ensures that by means of laws that the desired outcomes are realized. So that is where now we're saying, because when there is no law, we see the environment as a common resource, we tend to overuse it. Now there's a need for government intervention. In that way, they will be able to control how we use the environment. They will be able to control consumption. They will be able to control where we build houses and how we build those houses for the protection of the environment on its own. Remember, we are not only doing it for us, but we are also doing it for future generations. Okay. So as we've mentioned, that the market does not capture the social costs and social benefits associated with externalities. The market is driven by self-interest. We look at our own benefit. As long as a firm can cut the trees, do a factory, then from the factory, they produce chemicals that are harmful to the environment. They are not looking at all those things. They are only looking at what will come out of the factory, how much will they sell it for, how much profit will they generate after paying for the factors of production. Okay, so there are 2 possible ways of the environment here, grade 12s, where we believe that there are those people that are for conservation and there are those people that are for preservation. But we are saying here, let us apply all these concepts together. Let us have a situation where there's conservation as well as the situation where there's preservation. Okay, how does this look like? It refers to conservation now. Looking after the natural resources to ensure that they are not completely used up and disappear from the environment. While preservation refers to keeping those resources that are non-renewable intact, such as your ecological system, your heritage sites. A very close example here under preservation, it is the issue of gold. If we identify all the mining areas where there's gold, we just mine it out to a point. You cannot plant gold anymore. You can't plant it. Once you have extracted gold from the soil, it means it's over with it. But now if we're going to be using it to a point that we are not preserving it for future generation, it will be used up. In the future, in 50 years from now, in 100 years from now, those that see or find this environment, they might not know what is gold. Why? Because we do not preserve it. Okay. Here, under conservation, we seek creative continuity of the environment while ensuring that environmental change considers the quality of life for both present and future generation. We are looking at it this way. If you look at animals, such as your rhino, such as your elephant, those requires conservation. We use them, but allowing them to grow up again. It means we use them in a very conservative manner. So what I'm trying to bring to you, grade 12 here, a picture. Renewable resources such as plants, animals, all those things require conservation because they can be reborn as long as we allow them and give them the space. And use, allow them to be reborn again and use. But non-renewable resources, your heritage sites, your gold, your ecological systems, those ones they are used up, they cannot be reborn again. It means they are damaged or they are lost from us forever. Okay, so conservation associated with renewable resources or species that can be replanted or living things. Preservation, non-renewable. So what we need to do, keep them intact. That means in their original form, grade 12s. Okay, so here's a picture that shows the difference between conservation and preservation. See here, if this is a tree for apples, as it is now, this one tree can be utilized for us to have many trees of apples. But if we can use it now, consume it, and finish it, it will never be there in the future. So what we are saying is that as we allow it to grow, plant other trees, allow them to grow, plant other trees, that is what we call conservation. Animals, utilize, allow them to reproduce, use, allow them to reproduce, conservation. But with preservation, if you can look at those things, they are contained into a jar. Should you open them and leave them open, they are damaged forever. It means they will never be regained again. So you would have damaged the tree that allows us to have apples. And also this side, you would have opened this jar that we have conserved, we have preserved it to be used in the future. So if we use it now, it's damaged. I always make an example with a bottle of Coke or drink. That applies preservation. If you want to keep it the way it is, don't open it. Keep it intact. Once you open it, it loses its form. So it is no longer preservation. It means it's damaged. You're going to throw it away. The future generation, you're going to tell them, we once had Coke. Where is it? It's no longer there. So preservation requires to keeping things intact. So I'm hoping that these two pictures bring a clearer picture to you, grade 12s. Living, conservation, non-living or non-renewable, preservation. Okay. So how does preservation then, how do we ensure preservation? By giving out what we call private property. And an example would be a river mouth ecosystem. That means a beautiful scenery where there's pure water from the rain that comes from the mountain that makes a river. That forms part of a farm, which is a private property. It has fresh water, prawns, insects, wild birds, which feed on those. The society thereof will come there and enjoy the pleasure of the scenery, catches some fish, the birds, and unspoiled nature. That's called preservation, keeping things intact at their own scenery in that way. Okay, so if this river now, or the river, we are to now to convert it into a residential area where now people stay at, we know the dangers of this is that now we'll find plastics inside that river, the fish is going to die, and the birds, as well as the beautiful scenery, will be washed away. So preservation requires a private property where we'll allow things to remain as it is, as like they belong to someone else. Okay? Preservation requires no compromise, where we say, if all the river mouths ecosystem were to be developed into a holiday resort, the animal and the life plant would severely be affected, like I was saying. So this requires no compromise. We cannot say because we are enjoying a beautiful scenery of those, now we allow it to be converted into a holiday resort or a residential area. We know that our activities have got a negative impact on the environment. So let's keep it intact. Let's keep it as original as it is without effect of human activities. Then also, if there be, the government needs to intervene in protecting the natural environment. Either they're going to buy or expropriate, where we say under the government control and management, the social welfare may be maximized, but it may also be costly on the other side, because the government need to give private property and ownership, or they will tax the use of those, or they will get the external costs as caused by the human activities. So we really need to be careful when it comes to these things, grade 12s. Another one, subsidy. If the river mouth could be left to a private property, but a subsidy given for maintenance, grants, or tax concessions, people will take care of that now. Where there's demarcation, it means I cannot go there to fish as I want, but I will have to get a permit for fishing. It means I cannot go there and relax, but I will have to apply, because now they will allow a certain number of people to go and see the scenery, unlike all of us going and throwing a party at that river bend or river mouth. But if there's someone who's taking care of it and there's subsidy from the government, the environment will be preserved. It will be kept intact. Controls: government can compel the owner to apply control measures such as the quantities of prawns, the quantities of fish that may be removed, and activities of various visitors, and the number of visitors that are allowed per day. That is what I'm saying. If all of us see that there's a beautiful scenery, we can go there almost every weekend to enjoy ourselves there. But because of controls, we're not going to go there every day. Instead, we'll allow it to breathe, and we'll allow it to regain or to be kept in its original form. So these are some of the measures that can be done to ensure preservation in grade 12. 1, we ensure that we issue private property. 2, we ensure that there's government policies that are implemented. Also, we look at the issue of subsidies. We look at the issue of controls by the government. Then preservation can be ensured. Grade 12. Okay. This is your essay. Okay, possible essay. Question 6, paper 2. Preliminary exam, final examination. How can government intervention ensure sustainable development? It's a question. How can government intervention ensure sustainable development? It means, how does government ensure that the environment is kept safe? Number 1, they should grant property rights. Okay, so people usually take care of things that belong to them and will try to use them profitably as long as possible. You know, when I explain this one, I make an example with someone who's renting a house and the owner of that house. The person who's renting the house damaged the property because it does not belong to them. But someone who owns that house take care of the environment. They maintain the environment. So even us, we are saying that for us to take care of the ecosystem, for us to take care of that river bend that we're talking about, there should be property rights. It should belong to someone else. In that way, a person will preserve it, a person will conserve it. I usually make an example with the Kruger National Park, or where there are animals. No one owns the animals. There's no one who can say all these animals belong to us. But what the government has done, the government has allowed private property. Someone is safeguarding those in the Kruger National Parks or in the parks where they are, so that they ensure sustainability of those animals. They make sure that they are kept for future generation. So we always say to prevent such a thing as fauna refers to species or animals, and flora, species, which refers to flowers and plants, from becoming extinct. The government can allow people the property rights over them. Hence, we are saying that someone was not born saying, I own a lion, or someone was not born saying, I own a shark. But to ensure sustainability, a property right is granted to those particular people. Number two, environmental sustainability. We've mentioned those to say there should be a subsidy or alternative ways that harm the environment less or that reduces environmental damage, such as reuse, recycle, and all those ways, as long as we are able to preserve or to keep the environment intact. Another one could be saying paying or charging for the use of the environment. This one relates to us as consumers as well as businesses, where the government impose charges. You and I know them as rates and taxes, government levies, where we'll see a truck coming to collect refuse or litter or rubbish collection. So as long as we use the environment, there should be a charge that we are paying, where we are saying we are paying for rates and taxes. Okay. The other one, okay, if we look at that, like I mentioned, first one is granting of property rights. The second one is the issue of environmental subsidy. Then we move to paying for the use of the environment or charging for the use of the environment. Subsidy, it's associated with firms that will find technology or resources that are less harmful to the environment. Use of the environment is us as consumers as well as businesses. For garbage collection, we pay what we call rates and taxes. Otherwise, if it was not the case, we would throw the rubbish anywhere where we want, which damages the environment. Levying of environmental taxes or green taxes. So here we are saying those taxes can be imposed on an output of a good that affect the environment or that have got an external cost on the environment. Okay, the issue of green taxes. Here we are looking at firms. Whenever they are polluting, they are charged what we call a green tax. So a tax that is charged on the pollution of the environment, it is called a green tax. That's another concept that we need to find, or we need to have grade 12s. Marketable permits, it's another way. Each business is given a license or a permit to emit or to pollute the environment up to a certain measure, not more than that. So it means because of, we see that whatever that they are producing, it is a positive, it has got a positive externality on us. So there is no other way, but for us to have that product, pollution has to be incurred. But now we are saying, let there be pollution up to a certain limit. So there's a license or there's a permit that is given to pollute up to a certain level, where we are saying in the developed countries, businesses who obtain these licenses or permits or credits can also trade these permits as long as they have not reached the level of pollution. They can sell it to other firms within the same industry. Then in that way, they will be able to generate or recover the costs that they have incurred. Okay. This one is called what we call a CAC, command and control. The measure entails setting of maximum permit levels of emissions or resource use, or a minimum acceptable levels of environmental quality plantation. Okay, what we mean by that, there are three approaches to this. Number one, there is what we call quantity standards. This method focuses on the amounts or quality of pollution cost, irrespective of the environmental impact. For example, we look at the motor car gas emissions. As technology reduces pollutants, that improves. So tougher standards could be imposed based on the best available technology. So the issue of quantity refers to an amount, how much of pollution can be there, or the amount of pollution that can be there in terms of their quantity thereof. So we are looking at that particular effect there of grade 12s. Okay. Under CAC again, we are looking at the quality standard. So number one, we looked at the quantity standard. Number two, we are looking at the quality standard. What are we referring to here, grade 12s? This method focuses on the impact of the environment, such as the standards are set for air and water purity. In South Africa, we are saying municipalities qualify for a blue drop status on the account of purity of the tap water. That's a quality standard. So as much as they are purifying the water, we want to check how clean the water is. If that water is so clean, as much as pollution is still there, but we look at the quality of life, we look at the purification of that water. And if that firm is able to produce purity water, then they get what we call a blue drop status. We can be able to be competitive around the world. Then number three, we look at what we call the social impact standards. Here, focuses on people. The other one, we said it focuses on the impact on the environment or the quality, where we said quantity focuses on the amount of pollution, the quality focuses on the impact on the environment, and the social impact focuses on people. For example, a tougher standard for noise levels are imposed in densely populated areas than in rural areas, of which we know that in rural areas, there is less pollution. But in urban areas, that's where most pollution takes place because of overpopulation of people. So in factories or firms that are in urban areas, they get to have stricter controls than those that are in the rural areas. Hence, firms, if they want to produce or they want to produce chemicals that harm the environment or people, they move away from the residential areas because of the impact that might have on people. So command and control, grade 12s, it takes three things: quality standards, the amount of pollution, quality standards, the impact on the environment, quantity standards, the amount of the pollution, and then the other one we're looking at the social impact, which refers to people in a way. Okay. We still continue again with what we call public control. It's a continuation of all the other measures that we've mentioned. We've mentioned property rights. We've mentioned the issue of environmental subsidy. We also mentioned pay for the use of the environment. We talked about environmental tax. We talked about command and control. Then when we continue, people also need to be educated here, grade 12s, of which we say it plays a major role in improving people's capacity to manage the environment. We look at groups such as the Green Party, Friends of the Earth, which forces the industries and encourages managers to integrate environmental responsibility into all their business decision making. So education will be, as much as we want the consumption of goods and services, what impact does that have on the environment? Firms need to be educated to come up with technology that is less harmful to the environment, that promote green economy. Also, consumers as well need to be educated about their activities and the impact it has on the environment. Okay. Lastly, we are looking at what we call voluntary agreements here. It is where there is no need for laws and regulations. There is no need for government intervention, but businesses themselves volunteer or take voluntary agreements to cut pollution. It means they find other ways or other measures as that will harm the environment less. Okay, that may involve formal contract, which would therefore be legally binding, or they may be more informal commitments. Okay, so when we wrap up this government intervention, we mentioned that the first one is the issue of granting property rights to ensure sustainable development, environmental subsidy, paying for the use of the environment, environmental tax, which is also the green tax, command and control, the marketable permits, and then also under public sector control, we're looking at the issue of education and voluntary agreements. So that is your possible headings under this topic quiz, our possible essay, grade 12. That being said, we'll take 3 minutes just to do this multiple choice questions, which is also part of us assessing of how far we are or how much we understand the topic. Your 3 minutes start now. Rachels, welcome back. On the issue of match column, this is what we're saying. You get your total here. And we know that for prelim exam, it'll be 8. So we need to get that 8 out of 8 as well as our final exam. So that we know that out of that 30 marks that we have, the 8 is given. It's a guarantee. But the common error or the common mistake that we usually see, there is no repetition here. It means an alphabet does not repeat itself. So if you are given A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that cannot repeat itself. You cannot have two G's in the match column. But the common mistake that we see, learners play lotto or they take chances where they will be writing B or C. There's no such. You just choose one option that is correct. If you made a mistake, you will cancel the first one correctly and clearly, so have a new one. So we don't want to see a point where you've got two options in one in one number or in one column A. That does not happen in grade 12s. So you need to be clear when you're approaching this, but that could be as a result of you having learned your terminologies. So let's look at this. I usually say here we do what we call an elimination method. Okay, so I will label this A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so with deforestation, if we do elimination method, here we'll be saying it is the uncontrolled removal of vegetation. So it means deforestation will take a F there. Okay? Then the next one says conservation. We'll see that conservation seeks to create continuity of the environment while ensuring that environmental change considers the quality of life for both present and future generation. So it means that will take A. Okay? Preservation. The key word there is where we say everything should remain intact. So preservation will take B. Okay? Command and control systems, where we are saying ensures that the maximum level of resources are used, such as the quantity or the amount of fish that is caught. So there, that one will take E. As you can see here, grade 12s, there is no repetition of letters. They appear as they are here. Then the Kyoto Protocol, where we are saying, probably you would say, but I'm left with C and D. Now you look at D, says an engagement between government and businesses to reduce pollution. That is not Kyoto Protocol. This engagement, we know that is voluntary agreement. So here we see that an international agreement to limit the production of greenhouse gases, it's the Kyoto Protocol. So that takes C. In that way, you have eliminated that. So out of 5, if you've got it the way it is here, you got 5 out of 5, and then you clap hands for yourself, and you say, at least I'm on the right path for prelim exam, as well as the final examination. So that's how you do an elimination method, ensuring that you do not repeat any of those letters there. Okay. May we continue? Now we are looking at, because the issue of environment, it is not a problem for us only as South Africans. That means it's not a problem for locals only or national, but it is a global issue. So whatever that we do, there must be international measures that are taken. Okay. And then we say the international measures have identified ways, and we are saying those are the 5 ways to deal with environmental problems. Okay. So what I want us to have here in mind, we identify the problem, and after identifying the problem, we come up with the solution to that, or what is the problem and the measure to that particular problem. Let's look at the issue of biodiversity here. Biodiversity is not a problem, economists, because biodiversity refers to all living organisms in an ecosystem, us included, plants and animals. That is not a problem. What is the problem? The loss of that biodiversity is the problem. Okay. So We are saying if those species become extinct or die completely, that cannot be reversed. Remember the issue of preservation as well as conservation. And we know that we come up with modern ways where we do gene transplant to prevent the losses of species. But we should allow them to be intact. We should conserve them and allow them to be in their natural being. So the problem identified is the issue of biodiversity loss. Then we have the international measure there. It is something that you call it CITES or CITES, where it stands for Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species. That deals with the loss of species or biodiversity. As we can look at, there's a target with whatever we are having here to say at least by 2020, there was expectation that there should be zero loss. It means there is no way that animals as well as species can be extinct or keep being killed unnecessarily so. But there is a target, at least we are aiming that at least around the year 2050, we should have been fully recovered. That means they should see green plants. We should see all the types of creatures that could possibly be there around the globe in that way. But how does that happen if we prevent biodiversity loss? Okay. Number 2 is the issue of chemical waste. This is a problem where we say chemical waste is very toxic and has a negative effect on living beings and can cause infertility or death generally. Where we say chemical waste need to be carefully managed to ensure it does not seep into the groundwater. What is the international measure there? It is the Stockholm Protocol. And there, that is to limit the issue of chemical waste. So chemical waste is a problem because of it is toxic. Number 3, it is hazardous waste. It's also a problem, but we are saying now it is highly toxic, where they ask you, what is the difference between chemical waste and hazardous waste? They are both toxic, but the hazardous waste is highly toxic and it has got what you call a slow decomposition rate. It means it is poisonous and stays very, very long. Can last up to 50 years to even more than that, depending on how dangerous or how hazardous it is. And that affects the animals, affect the plants, and also affect us as human beings. Where we look at that the most dangerous waste could be the radioactive waste from the nuclear power. So that issue of nuclear power is not encouraged, as much as it has got its own benefits, or it had its own benefit, but we realize that it is very hazardous. It has got a lasting effect on the environment because of it is highly, highly poisonous. The international measure that is taken there, it is the Basel Convention. Okay. Number 4, we look at the issue of climate change, where we understand that the effects of climate change are severe. Economic loss, rising sea levels, we experience more droughts, animals get extinct, and we look at more storms, soil erosion, all those things, rising temperatures, comes hot unnecessarily so, where we see a temperature around 40 degrees, while we understand that the normal human temperature is around 37. More and above that, because of as an issue of climate change. So that has to be taken into consideration. And the concept there, it is there, the Kyoto Protocol. It is an international agreement to limit the production of greenhouse gases. Okay. The last one, it is the loss of indigenous knowledge. I want to say indigenous knowledge system is not a problem, again, because that refers to the traditional way of doing things, where we do not have the new methods of doing things, relying on the natural environment as it is. So indigenous knowledge is not a problem, but the loss of that indigenous knowledge it is a problem. We use traditional people use organic methods and natural uh, processes. For example, if you are experiencing fever or flu, they will tell you that rather than us going to a clinic or a doctor or buy medication, they will tell you that get eucalyptus tree, boil it, and then at night drink it, or in the morning drink it. That's the traditional way of doing things. So that indigenous knowledge, we still need it for our survival. So as people are now urbanized, or as people are now moving away from the rural to the cities, that indigenous knowledge way of doing things get lost in the process, to a point now that the same trees or the same plants that are beneficial to us, we cut them down, we burn them because we don't know their benefit. So the indigenous way of doing things is lost. But someone who knows the benefits of eucalyptus oil or aloe, yeah, they will say, no, don't cut that tree or don't cut that plant because of it has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 benefits. But if I see an aloe plant there, I'm thinking that this is going to affect my movement, or this does not make my house to look good, then I cut it. In that way, the indigenous system or indigenous knowledge is lost. So we need to keep it intact. How does that happen? So we say UNESCO, it is there, or it is used to govern the preservation of indigenous knowledge system. We are keeping them intact. Grade 12s. Okay. Then we have what we call other major international protocols and agreements. I'll just do this, where we say the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Sustainable Development Goals are there to eradicate poverty across the world, because it's a problem as well. And then we look at the change in consumption patterns, the issue of globalization, and we look at health and environment. All those are what we call sustainable development goals. What we mean is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being for all people, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovations and infrastructure, reduction of inequalities across the world, sustainable cities and communities, reduce the consumption and production patterns, the issue of climate change across the world, where we look at life below water and where we look at life on land, and we fight for peace and justice across the world and promote partnership. Those are what we call sustainable development goals. As you can see, grade 12s, they speak to you and I, and that also have got an impact on the environment. Okay, another two that we have, it is the Rio de Janeiro Summit that was there on the Millennium Goals and to promote the ecosystem. Then we also later on came up with the Rio Plus Summit, which is also known as the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. It took place in Brazil. And the main issue there was sustainable growth, poverty eradication without damaging the environment. It was also agreeing on the issue of green economy, where we say green economy, it's the way of using resources or mechanism that does not harm the environment. Okay. Then we shifted from 2000, we had what we call the Millennium Development Goals from the year 2000 up until 2015, where we now shifted to what we call Sustainable Development Goals up until the year 2030. And then after the year 2030, we'll shift to what we call Future Goals. Okay. We'll just allow, I think, because this is a revision, let's look at the extract and we do it in 3 minutes. Start now. Okay, great. 12. I know that probably we are still trying to catch up, or we are still trying to familiarize ourselves. But look at this. It's a data response question that does not have much information. You just look at the picture. It brings you closer to the content or to the concept that we are talking about. Then we move on. So we look at here. It's an environmental problem. We can see that. And really, we can see that someone can even die here. It's harmful. And it is really, really toxic in its nature. Let's look at the questions. Or this question was taken from the Free State prelim exam for 2023. It was question 4.3 there. So the first question says, identify an environmental problem depicted in the picture above. And the answer there, it is hazardous or toxic waste. So that's your mark there. You get 1 mark. The second one says, name the international measure that manages nuclear waste. Hence, I said now, we identify 5 problems, and the 5 problems goes with the international measures there. So I'll just remind you, we said the first one that was biodiversity loss. The CITES was the international measure. The second one was the issue of chemical waste. The measure there was Kyoto Protocol. Then we had the hazardous waste now, and the international measure, there was the Basel Convention. So let's look at that. That's correct. So we've got our Basel Convention. There's our answer. Then number 4, we look at what we call the climate condition or climate change. The Kyoto Protocol was there. Then lastly, we looked at the issue of loss of indigenous knowledge, and the international measure was UNESCO. Right. Briefly describe the concept environmental sustainability. It means the ability of the environment to survive is used for economic activities. That gives you 2 marks for that. Up to so far, grade 12. Every data response question that you have, we are saying these 4 marks are standard. It means these are the 4 marks that, at least for every data response or for every question that you attempt, you say, I have these 4 marks in the bag. So it's 40% of every 10 marks that is given. That's at least something that you should be saying, I'm fighting for. That is where we are saying, we are fighting for distinctions here. We are fighting to get those marks. So these are what we call hanging fruits. So we need to fight to have this 4 marks. Okay, we move on. It says, why is it difficult for the free market to ensure environmental sustainability? You remember the problems associated with the market, where we said they see the market as a common resource, carelessness, and lack of knowledge. Okay, let's see here. Right. The free market have free access to the resources because they believe the environment does not belong to any person. And this leads to an over-exploitation of those particular resources. Free markets fosters inequality and poverty and the social ills which put pressure on the environment. Why? Because they are looking at the private benefits and the private costs in order to maximize the profit. So the free market only focuses on profit maximization. They do not look at other things. Hence, they fail to ensure environmental sustainability. As to how the pollution affects the environment, they care less. As to how does it affect human beings, they care less. Remember the concept of externalities that I mentioned. Why? Because they are only looking at the private benefits and the private costs in order to maximize profit. Okay. Then the last one says, what are the negative effects of soil erosion on the environment? We know that leads to increased pollution in streams as well as rivers because the soil gets eroded to that. It is a major environmental threat to sustainability and productivity as it affects the soil fertility as well as human food security in a way. So where we used to plant, where we used to get our food, if that is eroded away, we know that then at the end of the day, we no longer have food security and the soil is no longer rich anymore. Those are the problems that we are having. It degrades the land That means it loses its form and makes it to be less productive. Soil erosion may result in destruction of water sources such as the dams, because now we know that these dams are surrounded. So if the soil get eroded away, that gets to be destructed. And we tend to suffer in that way, grade 12. Then lastly, it also destroys the ecosystem, where we look at the grazing land for the animals get affected because there's no more grass, there's no more trees in other ways. We get to experience that, especially in the farms, in the rural areas. That's where most we experience it. Here in the cities or in the urban areas, we don't get to see that mostly because of buildings and everything. But this is a danger because of food security is affected. It becomes less productive. Water sources, again, it's an issue again. So these are the dangers of soil erosion, but we'll accept any other correct relevant answer that is provided by you, grade 12. So this topic, it's a contemporary economic issue. What we mean by that, it is close to our heart, it is close to our eyes. We can talk about it, we can see it, and it's easy for us to relate to these particular topics, grade 12. So with that, we are saying thank you for watching this lesson. See you next time.